former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum from the state of Pennsylvania. Sir, good to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. It's always great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
It's always so great to talk to you. Let me. I think I want to talk about the debate in part with you, and especially as it relates to what should Republican Party leadership look like. Vivek Ramaswamy made a big deal of saying Ronna McDaniel should resign last night. But let's focus first and foremost on this week's elections. There was a lot of belief that things are so crappy right now that Republicans will be the beneficiary of all of that crappiness, and it's just not the case. Republicans really. There are a couple of wins here and there. Buddha Bibberai thrown out in Loudoun County, wonderful. But by and large, Republicans didn't fare very well this week. The left says it's abortion. That's the issue, and they're going to keep running on it. What do you make of all of this?
Look, you can't argue that they ran on abortion and, they were successful. I mean, somewhat. I mean, they wanted Virginia, but, Virginia's a pretty blue state. And they got a one-seat majority in the House and a one-seat majority in the Senate. So it's not like they ran the table or anything like that. And they didn't really beat anybody in a district that had any kind of Republican leanings to it. I mean, the Republicans were going to have to pick up seats that were, +6, +7, +8 Democrat. That's hard to do in any election. Remember, it's midterm Youngkin. So, usually midterm a governor or midterm a president, you don't pick up seats. So, yeah, I mean, you can argue that they ran abortion and they were able to hold on to their seats by running that. But I'm not sure that, that they can make a big claim that this is going to be a great thing for them in swing elections. In Ohio, yeah, they won on abortion and they won on marijuana. But
yes.
Number one, they outspent them 2-1. Yeah, Andy Bashir won. He outspent them like 3-1. So, I mean, the big problem here, and this is why you can blame Ronna McDaniel, but I'll tell you who else I blame. And I don't know who's running for president on that stage last night, because no one in that field really, I mean, other than a couple of offhand comments that they made, no one was running against the person who's running the race. Usually when you're in a debate, you go after the person at the top of the, who's ahead of you.
Right.
Nobody did. And you can say, well, Chris Christie's done it. Yeah, that's one. But if he's the only one, then it just looks like, well, he's got a personal bone to pick with Trump. I don't know if it was me last night, and I've been on that presidential stage many, many, many times for a debate, I would have gotten it with Nikki, and I would have gotten with DeSantis, and I would have said, look, I said, we either have to hold hands and go after this guy because he's not here. He's playing. He's just going to watch us and make fun of us from the sides as we sit in the sandbox and throw sand at each other.
Right.
I said we got to pull them into this debate, and they're not. And so to me, they're not doing it for one of two reasons. Either that they're running for 2028, or they're running for vice president, or the third reason is they think that Trump is going to get convicted and not be on the ticket, and they want to leave a viable option to be picked at the convention. Because there's no other excuse for their behavior.
Well, there is one other lane that I can think of, Senator Santorum, which is they don't want to alienate Trump supporters. I mean, we've got record numbers of people in the United States that both supported Trump in the first place and then as an incumbent tried to reelect him. And I think the angle that every one of them on stage, except for Chris Christie, is taking is they want to appeal to those Trump voters. But if you can't attack Trump, you can't delineate yourself.
I was just saying, I accepted that for a long time. I mean, not that I haven't talked to the campaigns and not that I haven't been commenting on this for a while.
Right.
I accepted the fact. Look, if you want to play it safe and you want to just see if you can make your way without having to go after Trump. The Democrats have made that impossible by making him a martyr. And so the only option at this point, look, you're 2.5 months away.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't decide I'm going to go try to win this thing, inertia is going to be your problem.
Let me ask you, you're in a unique position to talk about this as a man who won Iowa. The focus among these not Trump candidates right now, at least especially in Ron DeSantis' case, is I need to win Iowa. If I can win Iowa, that's a head of steam. Is that wise? Is Iowa the strategy? Does that make any meaningful difference in a race that has this much of a separation?
I don't think you have any choice. I mean, there's no really other opportunity. You have an opportunity in Iowa because Iowans, unlike most of the country, don't just follow the horse in front of them. I mean, they're the lead horse. And so they aren't blind. They don't have blinders on. They're not accepting what most of the conservative talking heads are talking about. They actually get the chance to meet the candidates. They actually can measure up those candidates and decide who they want, and they take that responsibility seriously. And I have no doubt that a non-Trump candidate can win there, but they're not going to win if you're not willing to show that you got the guts to lead and to take on the problem that is the Republican Party right now, which is Donald Trump. And look, I understand Vivek went after Ronna McDaniel last night, but the idea that Ronna McDaniel is the leader of the Republican Party, that's a joke. Nobody knows who Ronna McDaniel is. The leader of the Republican Party since 2016 is Donald Trump. And for Vivek and for nobody on that stage to say, well, look, yeah, Ronna's had her problems, but the reason we're losing is because the face of the Republican Party, the person we've got to run with, is Donald Trump. And no one did that. Again, not serious. You just can't convince me that these folks are serious about winning this race if they're not willing to get serious about what the problems are confronting the party.
But I guess a couple of things that I can think of. One is that Ronna does control resources within the party, and that's really what this comes down to. In fact, when she was asked about this yesterday by our colleague Larry O'Connor, that hey, what's the deal with Virginia? She said we offered money to Virginia, and we offered money to the governor, and he refused it. He said no, we don't need your help. So she was kind of passing blame in terms of how that was conducted yesterday. The other piece is like when it comes to reasons for why Republicans are losing. I do see a lot of people trying to blame Trump and saying, hey, it's his fault, and that's why Republicans aren't performing well. And then simultaneously, I see, well, it's abortion. Abortion is the explanation for why Republicans aren't doing well, and those feel like mutually exclusive explanations because Trump is not some sort of enthusiastic pro-lifer. In fact, he comes around and he kind of smacks the pro-life industry around occasionally, the people who are fighting for it. And he says things like, oh, I think it's a money-making enterprise, that kind of thing. So it does seem that there's a lot of like clawing around for explanations and nobody quite sticking the landing.
Well, look, it doesn't have to be one thing. I think it can be more than one thing. It certainly you look at the fact that I always say that for Democrats, politics is their religion. They don't go to church by and large. You don't see a lot of Democrats in the pews anymore. And most of the, certainly the left, the progressives, they don't have families. They don't go to church. They don't have families. Their religion is politics. Their religion is government, and that's where they give their money every week and every other week.
Right.
And whereas Republicans don't. And look at the turnout. I mean, the turnout in Ohio among Republicans was pathetic. I mean, we have a lot of Republicans who again, this is a hobby for them. This is the religion for the Democrats. It's a hobby for Republicans.
Yes.
I mean, we see look, and I'm not criticizing Republicans in this respect. They see God, they see family, and then they see country. And by the way, I think that's the right order. But you have to understand, if you want to be able to have the freedom to worship God and to raise your family the way you want, you got to have a country to do it in. And I think everyone sort of looks at this that, America will be fine. Well, if there's anything we should have learned, America's not going to be fine if we don't engage. And if you look at voter turnout among conservatives, particularly in off-year elections, they're terrible, number one. Number two, and this is where you can point to Trump, Trump can turn people out. But, he turns people out for him. He doesn't turn people out for anybody else. And that's the problem is we have a personality. We're in a sense, the Republican Party has been a cult of personality party anymore. And that does not bode well for when your cult figure isn't on the ballot.
Well, there's no question. Yeah. When Republicans on the ballot, big numbers turn out. That's just mathematically true. And so it'll be interesting to see, should he be the nominee and he's next year, what a difference maker that might be. But on this point about Democrats and the way they treat voting, I was talking to Chris Bedford earlier this week about this subject. And, one thing we were noting is that, Democrats, their leadership have basically fetishized the act of voting, but without consideration for what the effects would be. So they just say, they tell voters, people in their own base, the most important thing you can do is vote, and that's like your whole life, and that's you expressing yourself, and you have to vote for what we tell you to, and there you go. That's it. That's the whole thing. Whereas Republicans, they're not like that. Republican voters are not like that at all. They're skeptical. They've got busy lives. They've got priorities, and so we're dealing with two very different electorates. To your point.
that's why off-year elections tend to not be great elections for Republicans, is because we're not motivated by the civic duty, or more importantly, by a passion about the role of government in our lives being the central thing that drives us to do this. And it's a problem. And not just that, but it's also money. I mean, Republicans are now, for probably 10, 12 years now, are just being habitually, just horribly outspent. And it's two reasons. Number one, what we just talked about, which is, Republicans give money to send their kids to school and to provide for them and to contribute to their church and their nonprofit. Whereas Democrats, I mean, their faith, their religion, their collection box is giving to candidates. And so there's huge numbers of grassroots Democrats who contribute to candidates on a regular basis. Not true among Republicans, just not big donors. Number one. Number two is where the money is in this country. I mean, money in this country up until 25 years ago, rich business people were conservatives and Republicans. Now, rich business people are all leftists. They're big tech. They're folks who made money in the new economy, and they're all left. And even the old economy companies are now being more and more populated by leftists. And so the big dollars, the billionaires, overwhelmingly are leftists. And guess what? These leftists aren't any different than the low-income leftists. Government is their god, right?
Yes.
Other than they made their money in business, they feel guilty about it, so they just give all this money to left-wing causes to politics.
Yeah, the left.
So it's a very tough situation for Republicans financially right now.
The left is their church, and that's how they pay their tithe.
Yep.
They're a bunch of devout Democrats. Okay, hey, as always, Senator Rick Santorum.
By the way,
Go ahead.
By the way, their sacrifice, in my opinion, is abortion. There's always something that needs to be sacrificed, and in my opinion, that's exactly what's going on. Is we have traditional sacrifice. In this case, it's the sacrifice of little babies to appease the masses.
Yep, unquestionably, human sacrifice is very much I don't want to say alive and well, but it's here. Thank you very much, Rick Santorum. Good to talk to you, sir.